So today we're actually going to start by talking about what is a front-end framework. We keep talking about how Angular is one. We keep talking about front-end frameworks and what they are, but how do they work? What are some other ones, and what are their advantages? And then we're actually going to go into directives, which is essentially how you insert Angular code into your HTML document. We're going to go over modules, which are essentially the application containers for any Angular app, controllers, which is how where you're going to put your application logic for your Angular app, as well as the models and data bindings, which is how we're going to actually display to our users our data and what we're getting from the backend, presumably. And then we're going to go into routing, which is interesting because routing is typically something that we do in the backend. We're saying, hey, hit this endpoint or go to this page. But you can actually do that from just within a single page application through using Angular routing. And we're going to show you a bit of that as well.
What is a single page app?
So a single page application is, I think one of the canonical things that people talk about when they talk about single-page applications is actually Gmail, right? Because it's an application that, you'll look at, and it has a lot of different features. You're going to go into a lot of different pages. But actually, when you're clicking into different links and doing different things, even though the URL changes, you're not making a full request to the server for loading a completely new page. You're only loading parts of the page. So you're essentially, even though you're navigating through different elements on the page and doing different things, you're actually all doing it within one single page.
Whoa, mind blowing.
Single page
so you're telling
application.
me that we actually never change pages. It's a big trick.
It is a big trick because you can see the URL changes. You can actually even go to the different URLs, and it'll bring you to that exact part of the single page application. But the advantage is that since you're using that, you're only loading exactly what you need. So you don't need to load your resources twice if you're calling the same JavaScript file, for instance.
So it's a bit snappier.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go in and talk about front-end frameworks and what they are. A lot of these front-end frameworks build the single-page applications that we just talked about. So a framework is something that will actually structure out your application, such as Angular. Whereas there are libraries like jQuery that have a lot of useful functions that make JavaScript a little bit easier to manipulate, to give you a lot of helper functions, and basically make your JavaScript interactions less painful. They might even, like jQuery, come with a lot of add-ins that will allow you to do cool transitions or decent effects, and they'll also allow you to, for instance, make HTTP requests or XHR requests more easily. But AngularJS and other MVC frameworks will do that plus a lot more. So whereas jQuery, for instance, doesn't really care about how you structure out your application so long as you include your jQuery application in, Angular will actually say, hey, put all your logic specifically here in your views or in your HTML templates that you're using to display the page, put in where the code actually goes. Put in what elements actually belong here, and you're really separating out a lot of logic. So AngularJS and other MVC frameworks are a lot more opinionated in that way.
That's what I was about to say. Opinionated is kind of like what it seems to be, whereas jQuery is really unopinionated.
Yeah. So Angular is an MVC front-end framework, much like a lot of other ones, such as Backbone or Ember. Yep. And there are quite a few popular JavaScript MVC front-end frameworks. Sorry, that is a mouthful out there. Angular is something that is probably more opinionated than the rest because they really want to structure out, like we said before, how HTML apps would look, or how HTML would be if HTML was written to build web apps. So with that comes a lot of things. So why use Angular in particular? Well, as we said before, it keeps your code really, really organized and structured. You're going to probably put all your controllers in one place, and you will specify that, hey, these are the things that are specifically modifying the data before we're pushing it out for users to view. There's also two-way data binding, which is something that I think we touched lightly on before. But what that basically is saying is that if you change around your data and apply some logic to it, for instance, in your controller, it's automatically going to change and appear differently in your front end when you're looking at that, because that data is bound between the application's view and the application's logic and control.